How are things treating you over there in Omaha? Alrighty. Robert, how's it going?
It's good. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. It's good to see you. Glad, just, thankful that that you're coming on, to share and, you know, help us during this time, as well, and share your knowledge, your words of wisdom, you know.
What's up?
So, yeah. So how's everything going?
Things are good, man.
Hmm.
Pretty eventful weekend, but we're here in Georgia, so we had an opportunity to
Hmm.
actually get outside and do some things. So still a little early. People are a little cautious, but
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
it's different times.
Yep, 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 exactly. So hoping for the best. So yeah, just why don't we start out by you just, saying a little bit about your background and what you do over at Elite Minds.
Sure. So, Robert Price, I am the now CEO and owner of Elite Minds LLC. And I do performance coaching, mental skills coaching, and I really have been doing this actually, which is gets a little crazy every time I think about it, but for now going on 20 years. So,
Hmm.
been at this game for a minute and just really been able to work with elite athletes, literally in every sport, every field. Um, and just through that process, just continue to just find opportunities to just grow my business and really give myself an opportunity just to work with guys like yourself, and friends and family. But ultimately, my goal is to really just try to get people to be able to perform consistently well
Hmm.
over time, so that way they can just become great at what they do.
Hmm. 20 years. Wow.
Yeah, I
Two
know.
decades. Hmm.
Yeah, you don't have to
So
say that.
yeah. So, okay. Yeah, that works out perfectly. So started in 2000. Now we're in 2020. Easy way to keep
Yeah,
track, right? Um,
easy, easy, easy.
let's see here. What have you learned over those 20 years? What have you gained? What knowledge have you and experience through running, with Elite Minds, have you, experienced over this time?
Sure. I mean, really, what I've learned, every business and every life in general has cycles, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're learning, maybe then you're thriving. But literally, what I've recently learned, about a year and a half ago, about a year ago, I started this quest, literally on trying to create a mental playbook, but an opportunity for me to give services to people without it being a one-on-one, because I recognize that as a therapist you only have but so many hours, one-on-one hours a week. And so
Mm-hmm.
I kept trying to figure out ways to kind of maximize that. And so literally what I ended up doing was just I call it just learning from the new school,
Mm-hmm.
and started embarking on different opportunities to like create a product and to create opportunities for people to kind of learn these skills that I teach in a more virtual way, or even a course oriented way. So, um, so one of the things that I've learned literally by just having this business for over 20 years now is just you have to be willing to evolve and grow
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And even when you feel like you're stagnant a little bit, um, you have to seek out mentors or seek out, I call it hanging out with people who are doing a little bit better than you, so that way you can
Mm-hmm.
really start gaining some wisdom. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned over the course of all that time really is that in order to thrive, you have to put yourself in positions with people who are doing a little bit better than you, or even a lot better than you, and just taking that wisdom and that mentorship, and never being afraid to tell people what it is that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. Um, the ability to adapt and adaptability is a really good, principle to like that I try to follow as well, because it's like, especially during the last 20 years, things have changed a lot. I'm sure, the
But
internet, all that stuff, like,
this right
wow.
here,
Yeah.
Instagram,
Yeah.
what live?
Yeah. We're
This
live.
is crazy.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I'm going to clip this audio as well so I can save it on my podcast. So if you're listening and not watching, like Robert has a nice white tie or a colored shirt on. He's got the mic.
Yeah,
He's looking good even in quarantine. So
trying.
yeah. So yeah. Yeah, so okay, this is a footballer's faith, so a lot of the followers here are footballers, aka soccer players in America, and so was wondering what ways can us as footballers get better in our sport through our mindset, and what tools and like principles and like you can even give some practical examples that you
Sure,
do um, to help us improve our mentality,
sure.
so yeah, go ahead.
Well, soccer in America, but football everywhere
Hmm.
else, right? It's
Yeah.
just that's America for you. It's like we're gonna just be the only ones using measurement with inches. Okay,
We got to be
so
different,
yeah, got to be different. So what I always, whenever I work, especially with on the pitch, right? You think about it as a team sport, and most coaches have their own philosophies on how they want to do formations and sets and all those things. But the reality of it is one of the things, depending on your position specifically, but really for every player out there, is to start figuring out really what is your expectation. So I work with people on trying to get them to at least understand we got to come up with the right expectations so that way we can actually now go from there to see if where you want to get to, if you wherever that greatness is for you, how are we going to get from where you are right now, to great. And so oftentimes what we do is we miss steps. I think that our expectations are super high, and what ends up happening is we feel like we can never quite get there. And so we lose interest sometimes, or we feel like we're a failure in our journey. And so the one thing, in every sport, but specifically on the pitch, I mean, think about how many times a mistake is had
Hmm.
or a mistake is made. And so to have some reality around that and understand what that really is, and then plan for when those failures start to happen. That's one of like kind of the first few things that when I'm working with an athlete, specifically what we do. Um,
Hmm.
and then the other piece of that really is just I try to get them to understand that when you are out there playing, that there is a certain thing called our thoughts, right? Our thoughts
Hmm.
drive our emotions and our reactions. And oftentimes we're just thinking that our reactions are just because, and our emotions are uncontrollable. But the
Hmm.
mind, the things that we think, that's really what controls those emotions and reactions. I mean, we think thoughts to ourselves between 300 to 1,000 times a minute, which is crazy.
Hmm.
And so if we can't find ways to control some of those, then we're going to have erratic emotions and reactions. And so, my job really is to work with folks and get them to understand how to meet their expectations, but specifically getting them to understand that the things that you're thinking, we have some level of control over. So let's control that, so that way we can control the emotions and reactions you want to have out there on the pitch.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, a couple of great points there, like you talked about like, that ultimate, expectations that we have for each other, for ourselves, as a player. And like sometimes we we can get lost in that, we can lose interest, lose sight because, what our current reality, we're not hitting it. So do you think during those times like we're losing sight of the ultimate vision, as in like we're not reminding ourselves, we've lost that visual of what the ultimate vision is, the ultimate expectations, and also like we just can't see it in our minds anymore, like we're looking at the current situation and we're fixated on that current situation.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think when we don't have our goals written down and discussed and really, nailed in, that then we have a hard time, aspiring to those things. So, and then in the moment, it's always about figuring out, well, what can I do in this present moment to actually get myself moving toward whatever that ultimate goal is for myself. And so, I mean, it's just like anything, especially with our faith involved. It's the same
Hmm.
process. It's the same understanding that I have to, at minimum, do some of the basic things, right? So, what are those basics? And then from those basics, we can start to actually start growing again in what it is that we need to do.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, wow, those thoughts as well. You said 300 to 1,000 thoughts per minute, right?
Yeah, isn't that
And
crazy?
that is crazy, in
Oh
my
yeah.
mind. And so you talk about like controlling those thoughts or seeing those thoughts. Can you go a little bit more into that?
Sure. I call
Yeah.
it more controlling the thoughts, meaning that you know
Hmm.
that you're going to think, you know that you're going to think. It's just natural. So for you in general, you can come up with, or you can be creative and actually say, these are the things that I want to think about. So the spiritual parallel here is like literally the reason that the Lord wants us to study his word, right? Is so that way the things that we think are of the word.
Hmm.
So if we then study, or write or tell ourselves what it is that we want to be thinking about, then that becomes ingrained in our mind, and those become the go-to thoughts that we have. So when stress and pressure, exciting moments come, you already know what it is that you have already fed your brain, right? So that's part of that brain training. And the only way to do that is to deliberately and intentionally take the energy and effort to make that happen.
Hmm.
Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And that helps with meditation, right? Sometimes, as well as
Oh
like,
yeah,
so the 300 to 1,000 thoughts. A buddy told me about this. It's like you take a snow globe, right? And when you shake it up, you have all the snowflakes going. Just relax, and it's gonna come down eventually. But if you're thinking about this one, you're thinking about the other one, you just keep shaking it up. It's just gonna make it worse. Get relaxed, get that stillness, right? Get in with, for me, it's breathing and prayer, and getting still in the word. Um, that keeps me focused, right?
yeah.
Um, so yeah, yeah, um, yeah, 1,000 thoughts per minute. Wow, interesting.
Especially
Um,
in game. I mean, think about it. When you're
mhm,
actually in a game,
mhm,
it's the dependent. You're constantly think about all the things that you think about. You're thinking about the shape. You're thinking about moves from, especially in
mhm,
your position, right? You're
mhm,
you're the I call it the backfield general. So
mhm,
you're really taking everything in, and you're constantly processing that information, and that's happening real time, quick. And
mhm,
so to be able to parse out what's super important, what's really important, what actually you
mhm,
want to focus on. I mean,
mhm,
that's called the clutter or the noise in our
mhm,
heads, and we want to make that
mhm,
stuff super clear.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, especially like in the heat of the moment as a soccer player, and me in particular, I'm a goalkeeper, so it's like it's a very individual. Like, yes, it's a team sport, but there's a big individual component to it as well. And
Oh yeah,
like, and the things like where like players are telling you do this, coaches are saying do this other thing, fans are screaming at you do this, do that, and then that what you did was right and they just didn't get a good view on it, then they're blame, all this stuff. And then also the margin of error has to be not like
slim.
very slim. Yeah. Um, as a goalkeeper, because mistake, it's a goal,
Yeah,
and games end 1-0 sometimes. So yeah, another thing that, so like you got to be very mentally strong as a goalkeeper too. So um, what any like any examples or practical ways that a goalkeeper could use when they're feeling all like these mental stresses that are coming on? Like the example I was saying, every like teammates, coaches, fans, agents, sporting directors, all saying these things for you to do, and you feel frustrated in the moment because you don't know how to go about it. Any advice for that?
sure. I mean, the main piece really I always say is what is the fundamental thing, right? So what is the basic thing, the most basic thing that you actually need to be putting your attention on, right? So what's
Mm-hmm.
the most task specific
Mm-hmm.
thing that you have to be thinking about, and really expounding on that. Like that's going to help block out the noise. And so that's actually the difference between somebody who's great and somebody who's just really good, I think, is the ability to lock in and focus by blocking out those distractions on that one thing that's most important at that given moment. And if
Mm-hmm.
you know if it's you as a goalie, it's a breakaway, or if it's a goal kick, or free kick, or indirect, or whatever those things may be, there's certain keys that you have to put your attention onto, so that way you can actually lock in. And that's when you're talking about meditation, that's one of the beautiful things about mindfulness. When I teach that to athletes, is really to be able to understand that I need to be able to bring my attention back to a particular task, something very specific. And so we have to be able to learn how to do that. It's not something, I don't think, that comes supernaturally. I mean, you may be
Mm-hmm.
able to do it up into a certain level, but I believe that the elite of the elite, it's something that they work on and practice intentionally and deliberately.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's yeah, exactly. That's impressive right there. So let's go ahead and talk about faith for a little bit as well, right? So
Sure.
what what is your definition of faith, and um, how do you think that it can help players?
Well, a definition of faith, we might be on here for longer than what we have. So I'll come back. I'll weave that into
Okay.
how that can help us as an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think recognizing that your talents are blessings,
Mm-hmm.
that they're gifts, they're true gifts, and then to recognize that after we acknowledge, like, okay, me being really good at this particular sport is a blessing. I think that helps with the internal drive, that internal motivation, because you now know that you've been giving something that, and it's almost like you've been given it without, you didn't pay for it, you didn't
Mm-hmm.
deserve it, you didn't get it. It's like literally like what Christ has done for us. It's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that this is an unbelievable gift. It's
Yeah.
undeserved.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us are, if we're athletes, whatever level it is that you're in, you have that gift. But what we know as an athlete is that the gift is great, but we still need hard work, effort, skills acquirement, attitude,
Mm-hmm.
all those pieces. Those are huge. And so there's this. It's an interplay, I believe, is that because you're always asking yourself, am I doing this using my gift for the glory of the Lord? And so I think when we start to have that question, that's a great space to be in,
Mm-hmm.
because now you're actually able to live with your gift. I call it with open hands.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that, the more that you give of your gift, the more that he will pour into your hand. And so you'll start to kind of live and weed and kind of use your life, whether in your sport, for his glory.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll start looking for opportunities to do that. Um, and that's, I think, like, super cool. The faith aspect, there's different ways to look at it, right? It's about your career trajectory. At what point are you the pusher, and at what point are you allowing God to pull? And so there's always that interplay. And I usually say to my own kids, but I also say to my clients, is like, okay, there's some things that we want to have in place, and what I call that is that you know you have to have certain principles, and those principles, they don't change. They're unswerving. Now there's always rules involved, right? And so those rules will change. I mean, that's just natural. One of the easy ones to always talk about is like speeding. We know that in all over the world, excessive speed is like not good, right? That's the principle. Even on the Autobahn, like they have signs that say, "Hey, if you're speeding, just so you know."
Hmm.
Um, but wherever you live, the speed limit is a rule. So those change. But to be, to have faith is to, I believe, just have this unswerving devotion towards the gift that you have been given, and then using that for the glory. And I think we can do that, and that in and of itself is a display of your faith. Um, Oftentimes, my favorite story in the Bible really it's in Daniel, and it really talks about those three guys, Abednego, Meshach, and Shadrach, and they have to go through and into the fire, because that is then where they meet Jesus, right? So for me, that's faith. Like that's some like, oh, you want me to do what? Like, you want me to go here, travel to this
Hmm.
country, go on this trial, do all these different things. But
Hmm.
I think if you do that with the right heart space, then you're going to be in a good space. So that's that. Those are some pieces. I mean, faith in and of itself is so deep, um,
Hmm.
and it varies for people and where they are in their own walk. But
Hmm.
I believe that the true faith is that God has given you a gift,
Hmm.
not only of your talents but of His salvation. So
Hmm.
if you kind of just walk towards that, that's going to allow you to start being able to answer whatever questions it is that you have about your own career and your playing
Hmm.
skills, and whatever else you have going on.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. Great stuff there. You talked about the gifts, right? Like these talents that were given, these gifts. And like, these were it- like our life in general is an undeserved gift from God. So like that in it of itself shows, like the love that God has for us. We were made as sinners, and He forgave us. So, but like now, when we talk about like our gifts, even in our life, right? Like when some people lose motivation to go after what their true potential is in life, or their gifts, right? In a way, it could be like, I, in my opinion, it's like if you don't if fear causes you to not go after what you want in life, that that could be selfish in a way, because it's your gift is not necessarily it isn't for yourself, it's for other people.
Right.
And that is why God gave you those gifts, just like you coming on here, just like me trying to pursue my next moves in my career for football. Like these gifts that we have is not for us. It's for other people to be impacted, to be inspired by it, you know,
Yeah.
and so that they can see the power of God, as well as the principles that we live by. Whether that's perseverance, endurance, faith, all that stuff. So you know, fear is tough. Fear is
Oh
really
yeah.
tough because we all experience it, right? That's the thing. We're human. That's what makes it so tough, is because we experience fear, we experience doubt, especially like when you're going through, some speed bumps, some sometimes you're in the road and it looks like it's a dead end, but it's not really a dead end, right? It's just God, directing your path in a different way. Like one verse that I really hold close to is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in
Mm.
the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. So it's like we we as humans can get fixated with our own paths, our own human minds, but God's plans, God's God's plan for us, is much greater than what we can even conceive with our human minds. So yeah, that's just some things that I believe in, and I think this goes back to what you were talking about as well, the internal drive, And like, um, yeah, I wanted to also ask you about like this power within us that some of
Mm.
the elites have, right? And
Sure.
like how a lot of us actually have this power within us that we just are trying, like some the elites have figured it out. They've unlocked it. They know their purpose. They know what they've been called to do. They've shown their gifts, to the world, and things like that. So what about, also, these people, they have the power within them, right? This power within them, but fear and doubt kind of closes down that power, and they're unable to unlock it yet, right? Yet.
Yeah.
um
Keywords.
what what um what would you encourage people to do in order to unlock, or at least start to unlock that lock, so that they can, show this power that dwells within them, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the I'll give you an acronym that I've heard somewhere along the way, but I use it now. It's one of those things. Probably back whenever it was, I gave somebody credit for it. But reality is like the acronym of fear, right? It's false evidence
Hmm.
appearing real.
Hmm.
Right? We so what we need to do is when we're trying to unlock who we are and what we're trying to accomplish is recognize that what is the true evidence, not the false evidence. What's the true evidence that I'm seeing? And sometimes what we need is a third party. And I say that all the time. So because we can't always see it. And that goes back to that story that I shared with you earlier about, I mean, those three friends going into
Yeah.
the fire, like, like you
Yeah.
going, nah, I don't want to
Man,
go. Like you
that's
going, like
faith.
you kind of need your
Yeah,
people.
that is faith. Yeah.
So you
Wow.
need to have that, and I think you can
Mm.
grow. That's
Hmm.
why it's so important to have it within community, right? So we oftentimes need that third party supporter. And I often
Hmm.
say, sometimes when we think about it, is that those who are closest to us sometimes hinder us from breaking through. And so we have to be just mindful of that. That's not because the people around you or the closest to you don't love you. They actually do
Hmm.
love you, but they are also operating out of fear
Hmm.
sometimes, or a sense of wanting to protect you. And
Hmm.
so sometimes when we have to make these big leaps and decisions and choices, that flies in the face of that. And that's what faith comes, right? It's like, okay, it looks like this is the way. This seems the easiest approach, but I have to have faith that God's got me. And the only way that I can even test myself is to go out and do it. And
Hmm.
so those are some things I think to unlock people to really start getting them to think a little bit more about just what they have in store, or recognize the power that they have within to be great. I think that's what my job is all about. It's really about
Hmm.
helping people unlock that, and really getting them to see it through just a kind of really a systematic approach, a very intentional
Hmm.
and deliberate way of making people uh, going from just, I call it maximizing the minimum, to actually being great. But you have to, we have to put in the work to do that.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. Um, you talked about, let's see here. Um, darn, I'm having a mental fog right now.
All those
um,
thoughts.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, like, oh, mistakes.
Yeah,
So like in a culture, today, in today's society, like even in the school systems when you're growing up, like, you're made fun of when you make a mistake, here and there. How do we encourage people to be okay with making mistakes, and also know that it's good to make mistakes, because you're learning more, right?
absolutely.
Like like what like this comes from the belief system as well, and like training your mind that like, okay, yeah, I made a mistake, but I'm going to learn more from this than, I'll give an example. Like, there's it was there's an English Premier League game with this was a number of years ago. Um, Ben Foster was playing again. It was I forgot the two teams. Watford was one team, and I forgot the other team who they were playing. But both goalkeepers of the opposing teams were competing for the England number one spot, right?
Okay.
And and the this one goalkeeper he kicks like there's a free kick in his own like half, and it was a really windy day, and it bounced over, and he scored on the other goalkeeper in a Premier League game, right?
Right.
And so the guy who told me this story, he was the backup goalkeeper of the guy who got scored. He was on the bench watching that day, right? So like that's a horrific, error that even at like the youth levels, like coach, parents and players, and that's let
Right.
alone this, where so and he tells a story and says, "Got that? Oh, we're back."
That's all good.
He says that when they get into the locker room after the game, the backup goalkeeper was like, he didn't know what to say to the guy who just got scored on by a howler, and says like, it was a tough one, right? Tough, just tough, tough luck. And then he's like, and he laughed. The starter just laughed. I was like, ah, that's okay. And he went on his phone, was just like playing some video games, and started laughing it off. Like, like he was already on to the next. Like he knows that mistakes. He admitted, he's like, I know that this mistake will make me better. So yeah, that was just an example of you know one that I just remembered right now. But yeah, how do we train in this way where it's like that we could be okay with that when you do make a mistake and like 98%, I mean, I don't even know the numbers, but I feel like a lot of people are like, gonna say negative things, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, part of mistakes when we mess up, a lot of times I think we're looking for perfection, and this is where
Mm-hmm.
recognizing having faith
Mm-hmm.
comes in, right? We know that we cannot be perfect. So
Mm-hmm.
if we start with that premise that we cannot be perfect, then what we can simply say is, can I live up to the 99%? So that's already
Mm-hmm.
giving us an understanding that there's going to be something that will happen that is it's just it is what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when people work with me, one of the things that I typically hear them say is, over time is that, man, we talk about failure quite a bit. And so what I try to get people to have is a failure game plan. So when a mistake happens, then what do we
Mm-hmm.
do? So that
Mm-hmm.
way, what ends up happening from the mental side of that is when the mistake actually occurs, it's not a surprise and it's not
Mm-hmm.
something that is unknown to you. You already now have a plan for it. You see, when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about what compounds a mistake is when we don't have a plan for it, when we
Mm-hmm.
just allow it to just, oh my goodness, what
Mm-hmm.
happened? It's just showed up, and then once it just shows up like that, then we're in our heads, right? That's the words a
Mm-hmm.
lot of guys say. So we can't quite shake it. We can't quite, move forward because we're constantly thinking about the mistake that happened. Versus, I knew a mistake was going to happen. I couldn't wait for it to happen because I have a plan in place for when it does. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you have those plans in place, those failure plans, in essence, I mean, as an athlete, if I always say especially my professional athletes, they definitely do not want, they hate the first one or two sessions. It's because we're talking about failure. And no athlete at that level wants to talk about it because they have their own thoughts about it. So, but the reality is,
Mm-hmm.
if we don't have a plan for it, then we're not going to be able to move past it very quickly in the moment so that way we can actually grow from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what I thought was also like, so there's a parable in the Bible where Jesus there's this woman, right? She's a prostitute. She's seen as a prostitute,
Yeah.
and they want to, the Gentiles want to stone her. And then Jesus, they tell him, why don't you do that as well? And then Jesus says, he who is without sin, throw the first stone,
Yeah.
right? And no one, no, like, you know, like, you know, and genius right there. I mean, that's just Jesus right there. And
Yeah.
um, then he tells the woman, go and sin no more, right? Which is like impossible, right? Because she leaves, right? But the thing is like she's still human, and
Yeah.
we're human, and it's like, okay, this is the standard that we see Jesus at, and this is his standard, perfection, right? And but the thing, another quality of Jesus is that like he has this unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness for us as well, right? So it's like, okay, how can we be more like looking at these two things, right? The have this perfection, like we try to aim for this perfection, but in this story it's like it's impossible. We're human, but at the same time also have this unconditional love, this forgiveness, because sometimes we set the bar so high for ourselves as athletes, or even as whatever you are, whatever walk of life you're in, um
Right.
and your goals, yet it's like we beat ourselves up over not reaching this such high standard, so yeah, what are your thoughts on that, about like, okay, how can we understand, like, okay, yes, we have this goal that we know, like, yeah, we're trying to reach perfection, which is impossible, but how can we forgive ourselves too, have this unconditional love, this unconditional love for ourselves too,
Right. Absolutely.
yeah.
So I mean, I think oftentimes, I mean, that's what makes athletes really good at what they do, right? We're constantly looking to improve, because and that's what's so funny is you always hear that in every athlete. They say that, like, oh, I can always get better. I'm like, yes, you can. So why are you? It's a constant. It's lifelong
Mm-hmm.
getting better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why are we fixated on perfection? Because what
Mm-hmm.
is that? Like, if you ever achieve it, aren't you then saying, "Oh, I can do a little bit better than perfect anyway"?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a language thing. I think sometimes getting people to understand, like, um, that you're what you're. It's part of those expectations, right? So we have to make sure that those expectations are right on board.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, you know, like Jesus was letting her know, like, sin no more. I mean, uh, do your best to sin less,
Mm-hmm.
So he knows, and
Mm-hmm.
I will share this with people, in general, who to make that decision to follow Christ is like, you're not going to be sinless, but he is asking you to sin less. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same looking word, but the outcome looks a little bit different. So I think that's important for people to recognize.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like, so these stand like Jesus Jesus is the only one that was perfect, so like, how do we live, like we also talk about like our fullest potential, right? Because we're human, we can't be perfect, but we can always strive to get better, like you were just saying. But how do we know where our fullest potential is, and will we ever know? And
No,
yeah.
I think we never quite realize what that is, because I call it, as soon as you do, then you're probably no longer here on this earth. Because the reality of
Mm-hmm.
it is that we can always improve and get better at our craft.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if we don't want to do that, then maybe that we should try another craft, But the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it is we should always constantly be improving. And that doesn't go against what being content is, but it just simply means that we have to be content in the desire to want to continue to improve,
Mm-hmm.
especially from an athletic standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Um, so talk about like we've talked about like our expectations, right? And like our ultimate vision and things like that. So do you think that like when we lose sight of this, like is that what makes us frustrated in the moment as well as like how to like what would you recommend to players, athletes, footballers, anyone who's even watching it, you know, like how do we like what advice would you give to keep our ultimate vision on something greater than ourselves?
Yeah, that's where those 20 years come in, right? So the I think it's recognizing that when we are focused only on ourselves, that our focus is off Christ. So, at the end of the day, again, if we're doing whatever it is that we're doing to glorify Him, and as soon as it's like we take our eye off of that and bring it back to ourselves, then that's going to let us know that we're not on task, if you will, for what we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when we're doing that, then we have to start asking ourselves. I would say a very practical way to kind of break out of that selfishness is to serve in whatever
Mm-hmm.
capacity that you can serve in your game, in your sport during that moment, so that way you can break free of that that selfish
Mm-hmm.
outlook. So in every sport, you have an opportunity to serve somebody else, to help someone else, might be another word that
Mm-hmm.
people would use. So even in an individual sport. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out what that is when you start to feel like, man, it's all about me right now. So I got to go and figure out how to make this more about him. And so we
Mm-hmm.
do that by serving other people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you talked about like so just serving other people, helping other people out, and it's like, you know, the more you give, you know, you will also receive, you know. It's like but not out of selfish ambitions, you know. There's that, you know, one that I, you know, like one verse, another verse that I like to keep, you know, ingrained is, you know, ask and you shall receive. Shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open to you, right? Because this exemplifies perseverance, you know, like it's also the a similar story where, you know, a man in the Bible was trying to get some bread, right? I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but you know, at the house they did it. They said, hey, go away, you know, no one's home, but the man
Yeah,
kept knocking, did not go away. And
right.
they got so tired of him, this guy knocking. It's like, just give it to him, so he leaves, you know. And this is like, you know, this is the perseverance, you know. And in sports, you know, like that's important because, you know, like a lot of times, you know, you can get discouraged. A lot of times you can be doubtful, fearful, you know, not to ask, not, you know, to keep going. But I also believe this is also, you know, within our spiritual journeys as well, you know, because we're gonna have some doubts as well. It's like, okay, like, you know, like is God, you know, is God really here, you know, during like this time, you know, like when why is God where's God when all this, you know, these bad things are going on in the world? How is that possible, you know? So it's the same thing. It's like keep having a perseverance mindset and keep seeking for the Lord, right? Keep talking to the Lord because he hears you, you know, like um you know, so like by not giving up on that. And yeah. And then also you talked about like the community, like so serving others, but also I remember you also talked about growing within the community, right? As in like having like a third party, you know, someone to check you, you know, uh, and having kind of like even like a power group, you know, whether that's a number of people, because like you can all grow together. Also, another thing that, you know, I've learned is that like we all have blind spots, right? That
Oh yeah.
like we have weaknesses that we cannot see. We have strengths that other people, our closest, brothers and friends see that we have, but we don't see it ourselves, So having those people to help us and 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 let us know these things. And another thing that I thought of is that, like, these blind spots, yes, these people within the, that are close to us can see and help us, but they have blind spots as well. So you can help them out as well. But all in all, the one who has no blind spots is God. And
Yeah,
on top of it, God sees every blind spot. Like, even the blind spots the closest person in your entire life cannot see. Like
absolutely.
there's a verse in the Bible that talks about how he knows every strand on your hair. You
Yeah,
know, he knew you from before you were formed. He knows everything about you. So that gives me even, like, I don't know what to think about that.
yeah.
Because,
It's just
like, yeah.
it's a cool thing to know that
Mhm.
because you know so when that's why he asked us to dig into what he's given to us.
Mhm.
The Bible is a gift.
Mhm.
We could go there scientifically and
Mhm.
historically and all those things for those people who
Mhm.
want to ask those questions. But it's a gift for us.
Mhm.
It's really here. It's an opportunity for you to hear from Him,
Mhm.
and so it might as well take advantage of that and then listen to it as best as we can. And there's so many different varieties and versions. I mean, I can find anything for you. So, um, and that's what's crazy. He reveals himself to us all the time. But definitely in that book is a revelation of who he is, how he is, what he thinks, and so how he moves. It's just an opportunity for us to really dig in because that gives us a little that gives us the hope that we need.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and another verse that that helps as well, for me at least, and it's a really interesting one. It says, do you know that in a race that all runners run, but only one wins the prize?
That's right.
Run in such a way to get the prize, right?
That's right.
So it's kind of incredible to think, because this is, the word of God saying, don't get second place, run to win the prize, right? And so, yes, we could say, this is about our sport, but I really think, it's also about our spiritual journey too, that,
Absolutely.
like we're not here to just dabble, you know what I'm saying? Like the word of the word says, run in such a way to get the prize, you
Sure.
know? So, yeah, I think when people talk about, like, maybe Christians are soft or things like that, but, like, I think this, sets us apart as well, as in, like, like, we are, we our mindset is, like, we're thinking of something that's, we are in Christ, which is, a little bit different, um but yeah, man, like, it's been a few things that has been on my mind, a few of those 1,000 thoughts per minute. but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've always kind of like that verse, because, like, I don't know, it's really cool to see it talk about, a race and runners and like in that.
Yeah,
So
there's tons of sport references in the
mhm.
Bible. I mean
Mhm.
that verse definitely stands out. But because again, it does speak to as an athlete and as we're there's lots of metaphors to it. But realistically, even as an athlete, if you're not running the race,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
well, then why run the race, right? And it speaks to the process of your sport specifically, but also how you're pursuing Him, and so and then getting other people to pursue Him. So it's one of those verses that definitely has like a
Mhm.
three-chord strand process to it. So
Mhm.
it's nice
Mhm.
and interweaved in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. Yeah. Because like, I think like if you're not going for like you might as well go for it, right? Like, come on, man. What else you got to do? What else
That's
we
right.
got to do here? In this life.
That's
I
right.
think that's another thing like I try to remind myself. It's like, huh, what else am I going to do in this life,
Right.
Might as well go for it and go for that prize, and for the glory, for God actually, Um yeah, cuz like that's another thing like as in like athletes um sometimes we can like our egos can kind of get in the way, like we build all this confidence and um I would say even for me, like I I would want certain results, to get on a higher level team, play really good, kind of for my ego sometimes, and like how do we tame like what advice would you give for like like taming that ego? Because that's another thing. Like I've been trying to, I've been how I've tried to lower my ego is by saying, okay, this is not for me. This is for God and the impact for God. Um, but in sports where ego can be easily inflated, especially even as goalkeepers, right? Like there's only
Sure.
one supposed to, they want a lot of confidence. What advice would you give for people trying to tame their ego as well as like they want to exude confidence?
Right. Well, there's the unique thing. I like using words. I already gave you fear, but ego really is all about easing God out.
Hmm. I
So,
yeah.
yeah. So
That's
that's that.
100%.
That's what
Wow.
happens. So
Hmm.
even as an athlete, you're supposed to be confident, but not cocky. So, but where does confidence come from? And confidence comes from four different places. So understanding that it comes from your past experiences, whether they're good or bad, those are experiences. That helps bring and build confidence. It also comes from being, physically fit or in shape, essentially. Healthy is the right way to think about it, right? So when we're healthy or when we feel good, you feel good, right? You're more confident
Hmm.
in your presentation. A third place really confidence comes from is looking at other people who I mentioned earlier who are doing just a little bit better than you and realizing it's like, if they're doing it, I can do it. It's that vicarious experience, right? And then that fourth place really is because it comes from what we say to ourselves. That motivation comes from us. And so our own thoughts about who we are. Because at the end of the day, you can have as many people tell you how great you are, but if you
Hmm.
personally don't accept that and
Hmm.
believe that too, you're the ultimate decider of
Hmm.
what you do with all of those thoughts. And so that goes back to how many times we
Hmm.
think a minute. And so we can just kind of make sure that the things that we're thinking are really about the glory or the gifts that we're receiving. How do I use these gifts for other people? That's not easing God out, that's putting him in. And so we have to be able to just check that often.
Hmm. I like that. That's so true. That's so true, especially about the belief system, right? As in like if everyone thinks you could do it, but if you yourself don't think you could do it, then you can't,
Yeah, I mean, it's just like
Oh,
it's just a wild process.
yeah,
See that?
yeah. You
Yeah,
figured
yeah.
out the
I did. I got a little something going. You like it?
yeah. I like that. You got you
I got to make sure
rabbit.
people are
We
paying attention.
yeah. That's good.
So
That's
I
good.
mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones that decide whether or not we'll take that information on, and that's why I think you
Mm,
have to book in your day, right? Essentially, and getting in the Word, listening to what He has to say about yourself, but also what it is that you're looking for. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I try to educate folks and kind of keep
mhm,
people with the sports psychology concepts, but coaching them from that mental aspects because that's part of the process, right? To go through this to really get that champion mindset is so crucial.
mhm, mhm. All right. Well, looks like we're hitting about to hit the hour mark soon. So if there's anything else you wanted to say, anything you wanted to promote, drop, any more words of wisdom, although you've dropped a lot already. But yeah.
Well, the coolest thing you talked about learning is that I just relaunched my website. So, sometimes people are like, website, what? No, but it's actually relaunched. It's pretty sweet. It's at www.elitemindsllc.com. If you're looking for an opportunity to complete a free assessment, there's an opportunity for you to do that there, and then kind of become part of the mindset of a champion team. So I'll be doing that. I'll be having a webinar at the end of May, and you can find those details out too on my website as well. So that's kind of the coolest, newest thing is that I'm dropping that just dropped that website, fresh content,
Hmm.
new stuff, and I just continue to process and work as best as I can with whomever God puts in front of me. And so I know that He's doing a great job of filtering the right folks. So
Hmm.
I appreciate the opportunity, John, to be on here. Footballers' faith, man. That's what's up. That's what we
Hmm.
talk about.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time because, I know you're a busy guy as well, but like, I'm glad, you can come on and share, your perspective on things, right? Like as a uh, mentality coach, as well as, a man of faith and how this, ties in with sports, but as well as, in life too, So like, I really do appreciate that. And yeah, just I hope, people who listen to this as well can, grow from this experience as well, from hearing you. And yeah, so thank you so much, Robert. Appreciate you. Alrighty.
Cheers, man.
Alrighty. Take care.
All right. Peace.